Good morning. The report, at least the summary report, has been distributed as I understand it, and more details are available through the department if you need any more specific details. At the outset, I want to thank the state police. You know, they normally don't do non-criminal investigations. Normally it's administrative investigations are done by somebody other than the state police, but I ask them to in this case for my own purposes as well as for the public's purposes. There's really not anything in the report that's significantly different. It's obviously more detailed, but significantly different than the reports and investigations that have already come forward. I think you're seeing the results of a change in policy that occurred last July. All of this occasioned by that dentist case where you had an individual who ultimately committed, well, I don't know if he's been adjudicated yet, charged with murder, that had 8 or 9 opportunities to be held and for whatever reason was not held. A lot of those policies have subsequent to July been changed, which has created another problem on the other end, but public safety comes first. And so the problem on the other end is we've got 2,200 and some odd, I think, as of today, backed up in county jails. I mean, that's another issue to deal with. We're going to have to open new beds. We're going to have to pay the counties a lot of money. There's a huge monetary impact that the legislature is going to have to address in February. I mean, these are legitimate bills that the counties are due. They're holding prisoners that are state prisoners, or they're holding people that are state responsibilities, and they're going to have to be paid. And then going forward, there's going to have to be additional money for operation of additional state penitentiary beds. Now, having said all that, then there are certain other things that can be done to back off a little bit on some of these folks. Some of the nonviolent folks and folks not charged with a violent felony or a felony sex offense can be, while they're awaiting their revocation hearing, electronically monitored. And still try to protect the safety of the public. Anytime you got a parole system or a probation system, there's always the opportunity for one of those people to do something bad. So there's always a risk factor anytime somebody's on parole or probation. But, you know, to some extent, there's always a risk factor for folks out there that have had other misdemeanors that graduate to something more serious. So the Corrections Board will be meeting, and we'll be talking about some of these changes, and we'll be trying to address some of these problems, but there's going to have to be a systemic influx of monies to address these policy changes and these new issues come February. There's just no way around it. You can't have 2,200 more folks backed up in county jails needing more beds without creating a financial responsibility on the part of the state that has to be addressed. And we'll be making some suggestions and proposals for that. Ultimately, it's the legislature that decides to fund or not fund. Questions?
Do you have a sense of how much more money the state would need to contribute?
Yeah, you know, there's several pots of that. At least $5 or $6 million operating costs for opening annually for opening some new beds, and that they probably need more than that, but that's probably at a minimum. And you're going to have $7 or $8 million worth of costs to pay back over a period of time to the counties for housing state prisoners. And then there could be more. So it's significant. It's not a minor matter.
The electronic monitoring has been something that's been talked about for a while, but it's not heard it was still in the process of being implemented, or do we know where that stands?
Can you answer that?
We do have a new procedure in place that will include monitoring. The system is ready to go today. We have approximately 300 units now that we can use. We have about half of them in use, but I believe over the next few weeks with some proposed policy changes, we may use them a lot more.
You said 300 units, that's,
Bracelets, ankle
Right.
bracelets.
The governor mentioned 2,200 people backed up in county jails. Is that equally spread throughout the state or a majority?
Well, yeah, let's be clear. A lot of that are folks that are waiting beds for new offenses. All of that's not just parole revocation folks. I mean, you got your normal new folks that are brand new into the system doing bad stuff that have been sentenced to the penitentiary. But I think what, did we decide 1,600 or so of, is the estimate is about 1,600 of those are parole revocations as a result of this policy. Truth of the matter is, we got a lot of people's attention too. They tell me anecdotally, and I suppose this varies from parole officer to parole officer, that a lot of folks that they might have had trouble getting in before have gotten the message, and they're not just evading supervision. So hopefully some of these numbers will level off. But even if they level off, you've still got this obligation.
In the statement you did, you talked about clarifying certain procedures. I don't know if you can go into these on this with correction. I guess what are y'all trying to clarify exactly?
Well, what we're trying to clarify is the risk factors, people who have been rearrested for a felony, violent felony, or for a sex felony, or the people who perhaps have a restraining order on them, people that could be dangerous. You're trying to identify the folks that are dangerous and make sure that while they're awaiting a hearing on whether they're parole, whether they're guilty of something else, or whether they're awaiting a revocation of their parole to go back to prison, those folks are going to be held in jail. Folks who have violated their, or allegedly violated their parole that are awaiting a hearing to see if they're going to go back to jail that don't fit the felony category or the violent category will be sanctioned in a different way while they await their hearing, and that's what you're talking about with the monitoring. It's not a lot, probably 200 right now, but every 200 helps. And then there's no guarantee that they won't do something stupid too. Anything else?
Specifically with the dentist case,
Yeah, specifically with the dentist case, the big problem there was the guy wasn't, I mean, there were just ample opportunities to have him jailed. Even though he didn't meet a lot of the criteria, even though he hadn't done a lot of violent stuff at that point, he wasn't cooperating with anybody. And he was gaming the system. One of the changes that you're talking about is the mental health thing. Instead of getting out, instead of gaming the system and saying, well, I need a mental health evaluation, and so let me out while we're waiting to get into for the evaluation. And now if you ask for one of those, you're going to stay in jail while you're waiting for it. Stop some of that stuff. Now, you know, if the guy truly needs a mental health evaluation, he's going to get it. But the folks that were just asking for it to stay out of jail, it won't be a remedy for them. They'll be staying in jail while they're waiting.
Over the summer, a lot of lawmakers suggested that this was a result of some of the changes that were made under Act 570.
Yeah, no, it could indirectly have been to the extent that you had people out there that are running parole that thought that it was important to look what statistics were. But I can't know what was in somebody's mind. But no, the Act 570 didn't directly do any of this, except to the extent that folks were saying, well, let's don't be harsh on them. Which was never the intent of Act 570. Yeah, Act 570 is working. What it did was it kept you from spending jillions of more dollars building a whole new prison. Right. It's not going to stop the growth that's been anticipated in incarceration. It slowed it way down. But there's no excuse for 570 or anything else to keep bad guys that are dangerous to the public safety out of jail. Public safety comes first. The bad guys got to go to jail. And we all know we got to pay for it. I mean, you know, it's not free. The days when they used to run prisons back in the 50s at no cost to the taxpayer have long since gone away. And it costs money. It costs money for guards, it costs money for housing, it costs money for medical and food and all that stuff. And I mean, that's just a fact of life. And the more you put in jail and the more you keep locked up and the longer you keep them locked up, the more it costs. But bad guys who will hurt you need to stay in jail. And we just got to figure out ways to pay for it.
Governor, do you want Benny to speak a little bit to what the board may be doing this week?
Benny, you want to talk? I do what you tell me, Matt.
Because of the state police investigation being over and all our internal investigation being over with the board, selected a committee to study the policies we have in effect on how we take in the parolees. And since July, since the Dennis case, as y'all know, we tightened the parole rules up. Then we are going, right now, we are studying that in a committee and have got a pretty good final draft that we will vote on more than likely the next board meeting to change the policies to reflect some of the remarks that the governor just made about taking parolees at more for felony crimes and more for evading arrest over a lengthy period of time, rather than a lot of the misdemeanors we have now, and put some of the misdemeanors out on ankle bracelets, GPS, and maybe some house arrest as well. So, and one of the things about the GPS is that's happened in the recent times, in the last year, before it took a parole officer to also monitor that case. And so you had to have additional manpower for just putting the GPSs out there, and that's changed now. The companies will, it's almost the same price, go ahead and monitor the case as well and let the officer know if there's any violations. So that's two things on that we'll start looking at for sure, the GPS and then some of the other back off some of the hard restrictions we put as the board in July.
Other questions or comments? Other issues?
You mentioned policies, but what about training? Do you feel like there needs to be more training of managers?
Oh, I think there's been significant training going on, and there's been additional personnel assigned too. One of the things I think, Katrina, that has come to my attention that's just a fact of everyday life, is that you've got different problems in urban areas than you do in other areas. Not just the obvious of the sheer numbers, where you've got Pulaski County having more parolees per 100 or per 1,000 than you do in other parts of the state, but also the demographic difference. And by that I mean, if you've got parolees in Johnson County or in, say, Phillips County, or say, you just pick a stereotypical smaller Arkansas county, there's a greater likelihood that everybody's going to know who that is and what's going on with that person. There's a greater likelihood the sheriff or the city police chief or the deputy prosecutor, the folks are going to know, because in smaller communities, more folks know more about what everybody else is doing. In an urban area, it's harder to know all that. It's easier to be anonymous in an urban setting. And so as a result of that, they need more parole officers, and they need more attention in some of the urban settings than you might in some of the other counties. Now, you got danger in every county and potential danger in every county. You're going to have these officers in every county. But Pulaski County in and of itself is a little different situation in terms of just its sheer numbers and its demographics that require more folks. So yeah, they've had some more training, but in addition to that, they got some more personnel, particularly in Pulaski County.